The first book we come to is the book of Genesis. It's the first book of what we call the Torah, or the Law of God. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament and was for many years considered the most authoritative scriptures of the Hebrew Bible. The title Genesis comes from the Greek rendering of the Bible of just the first words of the book, in the beginning. The word in Greek sounds very much like the name Genesis, hence the name. Scholars believe that Genesis was composed sometime after the establishment of the monarchy, which means sometime after David becomes king and establishes Jerusalem as the capital. So we estimate somewhere between the 10th and the 6th centuries BCE is when this book is written down. Now, when you read Genesis, you're going to find that some of the stories repeat themselves. Some of them contradict one another. Scholars have established what they call the documentary hypothesis. That's a fancy way of saying that we think there are 4 sources that have been compiled together over those centuries to create the book of Genesis that we have today. So you're going to find very early in Genesis there are 2 different tellings of the creation story. One describes the 6 days of creation and the Sabbath. The other is going to talk about a garden in a land known as Eden and the first man and the first woman there. One of the things that is beautiful about this is that the complexity of Genesis is richer than any one of those sources could be alone. We get to hear a multiplicity of voices within the same book. Now, there's 2 major themes that repeat themselves, so be looking for these as you read the book. Over and over again, there's these two themes. One is the promise. God promises faithfulness both to the creation that God makes and to the people of Israel. God promises faithfulness to them until God brings about what God wishes to do in the world. The second theme you're going to come across over and over again is the theme of the land. Land both as the creation that God makes and the land that becomes the ground on which Israel will establish its life. So be looking for those 2 themes as you make your way through the book. The structure of the book also breaks down into 4 distinct segments. The first 11 chapters of Genesis have come to be known as the primeval history. These are stories about the creation of the world and all of the land. That's where you have the story of the flood and the tower the people build to the heavens in Babel. Here we are asking the question, will God bring creation to the unity God intends? That is the question here. Can God do that in God's faithfulness? All the creation is involved. The focus narrows in the second section, which is chapters 12 through 25. We might call that the embraced call of God. The question in these chapters revolves around Abraham. Will Abraham live by faith? Chapters 26 to 36 we might call the conflicted call of God. Here we have the story of Jacob. The question we're asking in this section, will the younger rule the elder? And finally, the fourth section of this book, chapters 37 through 50, it's the Joseph story. We might call that the hidden call of God. The question we're asking here, will the dreamer keep his dream? So whether we're talking about the creation, whether we're talking about Abraham, the wrestling with God that Jacob undergoes, the slavery that Joseph endures, we are listening for that promise of God. We are seeing God at work in the midst of the land. Best of luck to you as you make your journey through Genesis.